I'm going to take you back. We're still in the month of February, but it's the 26th, and it's 2012. So you're visiting with your dad at his girlfriend's house. Gated community. Probably pretty cool. You're in junior high school. Of course you want a snack. So you head out and take a walk to the store. Just making your way to 7-Eleven for some Skittles and something to drink. You get to the store, you get your drink and your Skittles, you pay for it, you leave the store, heading back to your dad's fiance's house. Everything's cool. All of a sudden you notice this guy is like watching you, kind of following you. You have to become really uncomfortable at this point. This guy pulls over, gets on his phone, watching you from his car. He's watching you, you watching him. You watching him, he's watching you, of course. What's up? What's going on? You have to watch. So he's watching back, but he's still headed towards his dad's fiance's. Still trying to get to the house. George Zimmerman, the killer in this story, he calls 911. And he's not ashamed to admit he's only calling because there's a guy walking around here. He's got a hoodie on, maybe some jeans or sweatpants, maybe black, maybe blue, maybe green, I don't know. Just don't look right, don't feel right to me. I was on my way to the grocery store and he looks off. So I'm calling the police. That's what he said. They recorded his report and asked him if he was following Trayvon. He said yes. The dispatcher said, "We do not need you to do that." In other words, don't. But that's not what he said. He said, "We don't need you to do that." Zimmerman seemed to understand because he said okay. But then he still got out of his damn car and commenced to following this boy. Not knowing if he was a boy or a man because Trayvon was very tall, much taller than Zimmerman, but not as big. Zimmerman had him in weight, but I think Trayvon was about 5'11". Pretty tall. He had his hoodie on. It was raining. And to George Zimmerman, that was just odd. He was looking around at the houses. How dare he? He gets out again anyway after being told, "We don't need you to do that." Commenced to following this boy who is still headed in the direction he should be. At some point, Zimmerman claims Trayvon turned around and yelled, "Do you have a problem?" Which I could understand that, if that happened. We'll never really know. And Zimmerman said no. Clearly he did. But the next thing Zimmerman says is that Trayvon magically appeared in front of him and punched him in the face. Oh, first he said, "You have a problem now." Straight out of a movie, right? You have one now or something fake. I'm sorry, I don't buy anything Zimmerman says. Please believe that you can have your own opinion here, and I will have mine. So when Trayvon punches him, basically gets the best of him, let George Zimmerman tell it, gets him on the ground, beating his ass, which I hope is true, because he deserved it after hawking somebody, making him all nervous and afraid like that. And I know he was still heading home because he was so close when he got shot. So close. So how the detectives didn't realize who was pursuing who, I will never know. But we'll get to that. So they're fighting on the ground. Zimmerman's on the ground, yelling, allegedly. He's yelling. We don't know which one of them for sure, but we hear help, 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 help. To me, it seems a little staged. He waited until he got an eyewitness. He said, help, help. The eyewitness said, I'm calling the police. And the next thing you know, there's gunshots. I'm sorry. There's one gunshot. Because this guy knew exactly what he was doing. Right to the chest. He said there was a tussle on the ground. Trayvon was trying to get the gun. He wrestled back and then pow. We're talking junior high, y'all. I bet somebody listening got a baby about that age now. Yeah, there's some rough ones out there. But this wasn't that. He was on his way back from getting Skittles and a drink. Period. No one should have followed him. No one should have called the police on him. No one should have murdered him. Period. In my opinion. But that is what happened. The cops get there. They handcuff George Zimmerman for a little while. He's got some scratches or something going on with his head. He says his head was banged against the concrete, yet he's got scratches. Okay? His head ain't busted. And his nose was broken somehow. I don't know. So, they gave him medical attention for 5 whole minutes because the injuries were so severe. And he was later released. Later released. Now you're dead. Because you walked to the store in the rain in a new neighborhood to get Skittles and a drink. What? Was it the hoodie? What was it? That was so odd. Yes, this neighborhood had a horrible record. Horrible reputation for drama. Police have been called several times, most of the time by George Zimmerman. Now ain't that something? So for me, my verdict is in. But I want to talk about this. I really want to talk about this. And I've wanted to for some time. I've just been really busy. But here we are in February, the month that this baby was murdered. And I haven't even told you the whole story. Spoiler alert. Zimmerman gets acquitted. And I really want to know what y'all think. I'm going to show you some things. I'm not just going to give you my version. Although, the things that I said happened. Those are facts. I did not add or embellish anything. Now, my opinions on those facts were my own. But that's how it all went down. This baby was on his way back from this store. And he looked odd to somebody who decided to follow him, then report him as a criminal, and then get out of his car and follow him more, and then claim he was the one who was attacked. and had to defend himself. That's the Trayvon Martin story. So you decide. Did Trayvon get justice? Let's go.
Okay. They always get away.
Punks. These they always get away. Those were the words in that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy.
Seems like every day we learn about a new piece of the puzzle, and every day the outrage only seems to grow. But rather than allow the rhetoric to overshadow the facts of this case, we're going to step back and walk you through the night that Trayvon Martin was killed, minute by minute. 7:11 p.m., February 26th, a rainy night in Sanford, Florida. George Zimmerman calls 911 to report a suspicious person in his neighborhood. That call would last 4 minutes.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. The best address I can give you. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes. He's here now. He was just staring.
7:12. Phone records show Trayvon Martin is on the phone with his girlfriend. 7:13. Zimmerman is giving the dispatcher directions when he says the subject took off.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Okay.
7:15. Zimmerman hangs up with 911.
Okay, no problem. I'll let them know to call you when they're in the area.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
At the same time, at 7:15, Trayvon Martin's girlfriend tells ABC News she's still on the phone with him.
He said his man was watching him. So I said, what you following me from? And the man come and said, what you doing around here? Somebody push Trayvon because the head said this down.
7:16, the line goes dead. At about the same time, a neighbor's call to 911 reveals background screaming and then a gunshot.
Do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay. And is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick. Say stop.
Okay. Does he look hurt to you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right. What is your phone number?
Just, there's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes,
How many?
this one.
7:17, Officer Timothy Smith, the first to arrive. And according to the partial police report, the officer says, "I was advised by the dispatch that the report of shots fired." And in the span of 2 minutes, Smith canvasses the scene, spots George Zimmerman wearing a red jacket and blue jeans, observes a black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt laying face down in the grass, questions the man in the red jacket who admits to shooting the subject and still being armed, secures a 9mm gun, and places the man in handcuffs. The officer observes the man in handcuffs bleeding from the nose and the back of his head, according to the police report. All of this in about 2 minutes, the police report says, a very tight time window, according to senior law enforcement instructor Alex Manning.
You really want to know what happened in those couple of minutes. Were they still running? Was he walking around looking for Trayvon, or was Trayvon heading out of there? So in those 2 minutes, you really don't know what exactly happened.
7:19, 2 minutes after Smith, a second officer arrives, Ricardo Ayala, who observes Zimmerman already in Officer Smith's custody. Sometime between 7:19 and 7:30, Ayala says he tries to get a response from the subject on the ground. A sergeant arrives, checks a pulse. There is none. And both officers begin CPR. Another sergeant arrives and takes over chest compressions from Officer Ayala. The fire department arrives, attempts to revive the subject. And at 7:30, a paramedic pronounces the subject, Trayvon Martin, dead. Then the police report says Zimmerman is placed in the back of Officer Smith's patrol car and given first aid. But exactly when that happened is a matter of dispute. Criminal defense attorney Holly Hughes.
And we don't even know what time the EMTs arrived. If it took them 5 additional minutes to arrive, you're now down to 5 minutes for them to perform a complete medical examination on him. If he's in that bad a shape, they're not going to do something that takes 5 minutes. They're going to bandage him if he's got a gushing gash in the back of his head.
The timestamp on this Sanford police surveillance video shows Zimmerman and officers arriving at the station at 7:52, 35 minutes after the first officer arrived at the crime scene. The police station is a 15-minute drive away. Earlier, I was joined by Alex Manning, a senior law enforcement instructor, and I asked her, after she just saw what she just saw, what that timeline revealed to her. Here's what she had to say.
This reveals there was little, if any, medical attention given to George Zimmerman. If the paramedics were with Trayvon Martin until 7:30 when they pronounced him dead, according to my calculations, I have taken about 14 to 15 minutes from them to get Zimmerman from the scene to the police station. I have them only attending to Mr. Zimmerman between 7:30 and 7:38, about 8 minutes, to do an assessment, to treat him for any wounds. He wasn't injured that bad.
A dramatic tape released today by George Zimmerman's lawyers. And on that tape made by police, Zimmerman reenacts what he says happened that night, moment by moment. Here's ABC's Bazi Kanani.
Standing on the very spot where he shot 17-year-old Trayvon Martin just the day before, George Zimmerman described a vicious attack to police.
Like my body was on the grass and my head was on the cement, and he just kept slamming it. And I kept yelling, help, 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 as loud as I could.
He told police he was afraid for his life.
It felt like my head was going to explode, and I thought I was going to lose consciousness.
Then, he says, Martin spotted his gun.
I had my firearm on my right side hip. My jacket moved up, and he saw it. I feel like he saw it. He looked at it, and he said, "You're going to die tonight." And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it.
What happened next, everyone knows. Zimmerman ended Martin's life with one shot to the chest. But what led up to that moment is contested. Zimmerman told investigators he first spotted the 17-year-old walking near the clubhouse. He parked nearby and says he looked around but couldn't see the teenager. We know Zimmerman then went looking for Martin down Twin Trees Lane and encountered the teen around this area. The two moved along this pathway and around this corner where the confrontation happened and Martin was shot. But the question remains, who was following who? Zimmerman told police Martin was pursuing him.
he yelled from behind me to the side of me. He said, "Yo, you got a problem?" And I turned around and I said, "No, I don't have a problem, man." And I went to go grab my cell phone. And he said, "You got a problem now." And then he was here and he punched me in the face.
But this story directly contradicts the account from Martin's girlfriend, who was on the phone with him. She said the teenager was afraid and running away from Zimmerman. She told police Martin described Zimmerman as creepy.
So we're stopping at the bend. This is Retreat.
This is still Retreat via circle.
So at this point, he doesn't get out of his car. He spots somebody's watching him, right?
It's about where 1440 is that he indicated on the map is about where he saw him.
Okay.
When he first spotted him.
And he's walking in what direction?
The person is walking towards the courthouse.
Which is through the opening right there?
I'm trying to figure out where he's
Okay, so through that opening right there?
No. He's walking up the street here.
Okay.
He's continuing down Retreat via circle.
Why don't you go ahead and ride with him to get the audio from inside there? See what he's talking about? Well, I guess not.
He's going to stop again up here because he's... Let him get it done.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pause it.
Pick him up at?
Right here, right in front of this house.
Okay. Right in front of 1460?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what was he? He was walking in between the buildings, or?
He was walking like in the grassy area, like up towards, kind of between these two poles. And like I said, it was rainy, and he was just leisurely looking at the house. And like I said, my wife I left for the grocery store, and I just felt like something was off about him.
Right.
So I said, and there's been a history of break-ins in that building, and I had called previously about this house.
Right.
When the police arrived at this house, when I called the first time, the windows were open and the door was unlocked. And the police came and secured it. So I said, you know what, it's better to just call. And I kept driving. I passed him, and he kept staring at me and staring around, looking around to see who else was. I don't know why he was looking, but
did he walk off from there, or did he stop there last night?
He stopped, and he like looked around, and that's why that's what threw me off. Was it's raining. I didn't understand why somebody would be just stopping in the rain, especially. Then it wasn't like he was trying to run to get out of the rain, and I had never seen him before. Didn't look like he was exercising.
Where was he standing at when he stopped?
Right in front of 1460.
On the sidewalk or in the grass?
In the grassy area.
Right in the grassy area?
Yes.
Okay. Like about right in front of where the car is?
Yes, sir.
And then
I drove past him.
Okay.
And I went to the clubhouse.
All right.
Up here on the right-hand side.
And parked up there?
Yes, sir.
And what was his, naturally, you're good, naturally he left. He caught up to you up here, or?
Yes, I called the non-emergency line, and when I got through, I parked at the clubhouse.
All right.
And they asked me, where I was, and I told them the clubhouse, and I think I gave them the address to the clubhouse.
Where'd you park at?
Right up here next to that green truck. I don't think that truck was there, but I just pulled up.
Okay. So you just pulled in here?
Yes, sir.
And this is where you got out?
No. This is where I just stopped to call, and then he walked past me, and he kept looking at my car, and still looking around at the houses and stuff. So then the dispatcher said, where did he go? What direction did he go in? And I said, I don't know. I lost, because he cut down here and made a right. I guess it's Twin Trees Lane. He made a right in there. And they said, well, what direction did he go in? And I said, I don't know. I can't see him.
Okay.
And they said, can you get to somewhere where you can see him? And I said, yeah, I can. So I backed out.
All right.
And I made this right here. And I left here. And I parked right about where that sign is in the yard.
In front of the Ford truck?
Yes. And I saw him standing right about here. And I saw him walking back that way and then cut through the back of the houses. He looked back and he noticed me and he cut back through the houses. I was still on the phone with non-emergency. And then he came back and he started walking up towards the grass and then came down and circled my car. And I told the operator that. He was circling my car. I didn't hear if he said anything.
Right.
But he had his hand in his waistband. And I think I told the operator that. And they said, "Where are you?" And I could not remember the name of the street. Because I don't live on this street.
Right.
Retreat View Circle goes in a circle.
Right.
And I said, I don't know. And he goes, "We need an address." And I said, "I don't know an address." I think I gave them my address. And they said, "Give us directions to get to you." And I said, "If you tell the police to go straight at the clubhouse and make a left, my truck will be there." And again, they asked me where he went and what direction he went in. And I said, "I don't know." And then I thought to get out and look for a street sign.
Right.
So I got out of my car and I started walking.
Right. Go ahead.
I was still on the phone with non-emergency and I started walking.
Okay.
Down this way. And because I didn't see a street sign here, but I knew if I went straight through that's Retreat View Circle, and I could give him an address because he said, "Just give me the address of the house you're in front of." Okay. And there's no address because this is the back of the houses. So I walked straight through here, and I didn't see him at all. I was walking, and I was still on the phone with the non-emergency.
Okay.
I got to about here, and I had a flashlight with me.
Okay.
The flashlight was dead though, and I looked around and I didn't see anybody. And I told non-emergency, I said, "You know what? He's gone. He's not even here."
Right. So
I still thought I could use their address, so I walked all the way through. I actually walked all the way to the street, and I was going to give them this address, and they said, "Well, if he's not there, do you still want a police officer?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you still want a police officer?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Are you following him?" Oh, I'm sorry, back there, they said, "Are you following him?" And I said, "Yes," because I was, in the area. And they said, "We don't need you to do that." And I said, "Okay." So that's when I walked straight through here to get the address so that I could meet the police officer. And then they said, I said, "He's not here." They said, "Do you still want him to come?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Where do you want him to come to?" And I said, "You know what, just tell him to meet me at my truck next to the clubhouse. If he goes straight into the clubhouse and makes a left, I have a Honda Ridgeline, silver Honda Ridgeline parked right there. I'll meet him right there." So I started walking back. When I passed here, I looked, I didn't see anything again, and I was walking back to my truck. And then when I got to right about here, he yelled from behind me to the side of me. He said, "Yo, you got a problem?" And I turned around and I said, "No, I don't have a problem, man."
Where was he at? About?
He was about there, but he was walking towards me.
So he's coming from this direction here.
Yes, sir. I believe, like I said, I was already past that, so I didn't see exactly where he came from, but he was about where you were.
Okay.
And I said, no, I don't have a problem. And I went to go grab my cell phone, but I left it in a different pocket. And I looked down in my pant pocket, and he said, you got a problem now. And then he was here, and he punched me in the face.
Right here?
Right up around here.
Okay.
To be honest with
That's
you,
fine.
I don't remember exactly.
That's fine.
I think I stumbled, and I fell down. He pushed me down. Somehow he got on top of me.
On the grass or on the cement?
It was more over towards here. I think I was trying to push him away from me, and then he got on top of me somewhere around here. And that's when I started screaming for help. I started screaming help as loud as I could. And then is when he grabbed me. Oh, I tried to sit up, and that's when he grabbed me by the head and tried to slam my head down.
Were you on the cement or you on the...
No, my body was on the grass. My head was on the cement.
You can't see your best like this in this one?
Yes, sir. That's as best as I could feel through my jacket. I felt like my body was on the grass and my head was on the cement, and he just kept slamming it. And I kept yelling, help, 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 as loud as I could. He put his hand on his nose, on my nose, and his other hand on my mouth. He said, shut the fuck up. And then I tried squirming again, because all I could think about was when he was hitting my head against it, felt like my head was going to explode, and I thought I was going to lose consciousness. So I tried to squirm so that I could get, because he only had a small portion of my head on the concrete. So I tried to squirm off the concrete. And when I did that, somebody here opened the door, and I said, help me, help me. And they said, I'll call 911. I said, no, help me. I need help. And I don't know what they did, but that's when my jacket had moved up, and I had my firearm on my right side hip. My jacket moved up, and he saw it. I feel like he saw it. He looked at it, and he said, you're going to die tonight, motherfucker. And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm, and I shot him one time.
After you shot him, keep on going, what did he say?
After I shot him, he like sat up.
So you're still in this position here, basically.
Yes, sir.
You're laying down here. You shot him so he's in the grass.
Yes, sir. He was on top of me like this. I shot him. And I didn't think I hit him because he sat up and he said, oh, you got me. You got it. You got me. You got it. Something like that. So I thought he was just saying, I know you have a gun now. I heard it. I'm giving up. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I pushed him off me or he fell off me. Either way, I got on top of him and I pushed his arms apart. And I said,
trying to flip him over?
I don't remember how I got on top of him. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But I got on his back and I moved his arms apart because when he was repeatedly hitting me in the face and the head, I thought he had something in his hands. So I moved his hands apart.
So you had him face down then?
Yes, face down, and I was on his back. And then somebody came with a flashlight, and I thought it was a police officer. Mm-hmm. So I said, are you the police? And I still had my handgun out, and I told him, I said, are you the police? And my gun's right here. And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm calling the police. And I said, don't call the police. Help me restrain this guy. And he said, I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police. And I said, I already called. They're on their way. They're coming. I need your help. And then's when the police officer came around. I saw the police officer, so I stood up and I holstered my weapon. And he said, who shot him? And I said, I did. And I put my hands up. I said, I did. And I don't know if he told me to. I just automatically turned my back to him. And I lifted my shirt and I said, my gun's right there. And I told him a few times, I said, my gun's right there. And he goes, okay, I understand. I just need you to keep your hands up. And he put the handcuffs on me and then he took my firearm from me.
Of Of course, we'll have to wait and find out from those 6 women on the jury about what made up their minds for the verdict they delivered. But how would you have interpreted the evidence, those 14 screams in that 40 minutes? With George Zimmerman deciding not to take the stand, all we had was 2 teams of impassioned lawyers battling it out. The defense on behalf of the Zimmerman family and Trayvon Martin's family with those prosecutors. Here's a look tonight at how they did it. Once again, Matt Gutman.
Your verdict finding George Zimmerman either guilty or not guilty must be unanimous.
The jury's long-awaited decision came after a tense 3-week trial filled with courtroom fireworks.
He automatically assumed that Trayvon Martin was a criminal.
The impossibly long hours and short tempers.
Because I'm not physically able to keep up this pace.
Had even the judge storming out on legal teams. Finally, an answer to the burning question: why did George Zimmerman kill Trayvon Martin? Was it murder, manslaughter, or self-defense? The tale of how Martin and Zimmerman's paths fatally collided started here in Sanford, Florida, a small bedroom community on the fringe of the world's happiest city, Orlando. But it's a long way from the theme park crowds on a raw February night inside this gated Sanford community.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something.
That's the voice of George Zimmerman, and the guy he's talking about is Trayvon Martin, earlier seen buying an Arizona drink and Skittles at a 7-Eleven. Martin was heading back to his father's fiance's home in the housing complex, where he was spending a 10-day school suspension after getting busted on a pot-related offense, something the jurors never heard. Despite his youthful indiscretions, his family says Martin was just a normal teenage kid into girls, rap music, and airplanes.
He was interested in flying planes. That fascinated him, which led him to go to a program to, try to pursue his career in aviation.
Is there one thing that you miss most about him?
I miss his smile. He was a very affectionate teenager, so I just miss him smiling and giving me a hug.
It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about.
Initially, Martin didn't know he was being tailed by Zimmerman, a self-appointed neighborhood watch captain. By day, an auditor. By night, Zimmerman, who had a past interest in law enforcement, kept a wary eye out on behalf of his neighbors.
What was your first impression of Zimmerman?
I thought he was meek and easygoing, and at first I had a little trepidation that this guy was going to be running a neighborhood watch.
How do you think he did as a neighborhood watchman?
Fantastic. His efforts and his diligence yielded results.
And that firearm.
But in court, prosecutors painted Zimmerman as an overzealous wannabe cop. His language in this non-emergency call to police helped spark the racial debate over the case.
This guy's hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
And fueled allegations that he was aggressively profiling a harmless teenage student.
Just let me know if this guy does anything else.
Okay. They always get away.
Punks. These they always get away. Those were the words in that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy.
The prosecution wants to make it clear that he already had a mindset when he got out of his car and began to follow Trayvon Martin.
Armed with a fully loaded semi-automatic pistol.
Prosecutors argue that Zimmerman was hell-bent on stalking Martin, even when told by police to call it off.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Okay.
And then Zimmerman hangs up. At that point, Martin is on the last phone call of his life with his friend, Rachel Chantel, and he's racked with worry about the strange man shadowing him.
He just told me the man looked creepy. And
he said the man looked creepy.
Creepy white. Okay. Excuse my language, cracker.
Chantel says she told Martin to run away, but then she says she heard him being confronted by Zimmerman.
Why are you following me for? And then I heard a hard breath man come and say, what you doing around here? And then I started hearing a little bit of Trayvon saying, get off, get off.
This is the path where the lives of Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman collided that night. And out here for about 30 or 40 seconds, there was a black hole of information until dispatchers from 911 started getting flooded by calls from neighbors all around.
They're wrestling right in the back of my porch.
Someone's yelling 2 doors down from me, screaming, hollering, help, help, help.
Then a gunshot that shatters the night.
Oh my God, it's over the beach. God.
Oh my God. And there's a black guy down that looks like he's been shot and he's dead.
George Zimmerman did not shoot Trayvon Martin because he had to. He shot him for the worst of all reasons. Because he wanted to.
He said, yo, you got a problem?
But in this police reenactment, Zimmerman says it was he who was confronted by an angry Trayvon Martin.
And he said, you got a problem now. And then he was here, and he punched me in the face. He got on top of me somewhere around here. That's when I started screaming for help. I started screaming, help, help, as loud as I could. I tried to sit up, and that's when he grabbed me by the head and tried to slam my head down.
Zimmerman says the confrontation escalated after Martin spotted the gun on his hip.
He looked at it, and he said, you're going to die tonight, motherfucker. And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm and I shot him one time.
After you shot him, what did he say?
After I shot him, he like sat up, and he said, oh, you got me.
We're here primarily to support the family of Trayvon Martin and to demand justice in Trayvon's murder. But also we share in the tragedy in that we have our own tragedies in our own local communities. And so we're standing out for justice, not just for Trayvon, but for all of those who were senselessly killed. We're standing for peace and calling for peace in our communities and also for a greater sense of community as a whole. The libation ceremony is something that is an ancient African rite where we pour out generally water or some sort of liquid. So we felt that it was appropriate to have a libation ceremony, and even more appropriate that we do it with Skittles.
So we stand here on the shoulders of our ancestors. That's right. We remember them. We remember their struggle, remember their journey. We remember all that they've gone through to get us to where we are right now, and we say Ashe. And as we stand here, we go back to the birthplace of civilization, the creation of that first person. So we want to make sure that we're raising awareness. We want to make sure that individuals know that just because a person dresses a certain way or looks a certain way, that does not make them suspicious. Young people should be able to go to the store, purchase what they'd like to purchase, walk home without being followed or apprehended. And so as long as individuals who stand up and stand out, make sure that their voices are heard, then we know that it will draw attention to this situation.
No justice, no peace. Some of the signs outside that Sanford, Florida courtroom at this hour. You're watching a special edition of 2020. George Zimmerman found not guilty in the murder of Trayvon Martin. And this tweet moments ago from Trayvon Martin's mother. Lord, during my darkest hour, I lean on you. You are all that I have. At the end of the day, God is still in control. Thank you all for your prayers and support. I will love you forever, Trayvon, in the name of Jesus. The phrase racial profiling was not used in court, but it did come up for so many people across this country who watched the trial so closely. So did race play a role in what happened that night? Once again tonight, Matt Gutman.
Rachel Jeantel was the state's star witness. She was supposed to spellbind the jury with details of her phone call with Trayvon Martin just moments before he was killed. Then she opened her mouth.
That's real retarded, sir. That's real retarded to do that, sir.
19 years old and just entering her senior year, Jeantel was pitted against savvy trial lawyers who kept her floundering on the witness stand for 7 hours.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
I understand you. I understand you. I do understand English.
This was the moment that people were waiting for, to hear this star witness, if you will, and it turned out to be something very, very different. It ended up not being about Trayvon and ended up being more about her.
Jeantel was not only vilified, this professor says she was mammified.
Tell me what you mean by the mammification of Rachel Jeantel.
A lot of people came out and criticized her for her hair, for her dark skin, her darker skin tone, for being overweight.
And when she thought she was out, they brought her back in.
I think we should plan on at least a couple of hours.
What? Excuse me.
Most of what Jeantel was supposed to say got lost in how she said it.
At that point, did you know anything more about the case?
No.
Race surfaced again when John Tell said Martin referred to George Zimmerman as a
creepy ass cracker.
Please sit down.
The defense team jumped on that, suggesting it was Martin who had done the profiling. With John Tell, race, a sideshow before, became the main attraction.
To say this case is not about race is ignoring the pink elephant in the room. This case is about race.
Shortly after the bullet left Zimmerman's gun, race became the flashpoint, but the wheels of justice in Sanford were turning at glacial speed.
We want arrest! Shot in the chest!
There was no arrest for 6 weeks.
No justice! No peace!
It divided Sanford and a nation.
If a black man had come into a white neighborhood and gunned down a 17-year-old boy, all hell would let loose.
Celebrities and average Joes alike pulled on the kind of hoodies Martin wore that night. It inspired the Million Hoodie March, 1,000 miles away from Sanford, high school walkouts, and so many protests. The message was being heard all the way to the White House.
You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
Knowing what I know today, if I were a DA, I would not have touched this case.
Christopher Darden, famous for prosecuting O.J. Simpson, knows firsthand how race can influence a murder trial.
Do you think that the issue of race could actually affect the way the jurors decide the verdict?
People say all the time, all around, everywhere I go, no, if he wasn't black, he wouldn't have followed him. If he wasn't black, he wouldn't have gotten out of his vehicle. If he wasn't black, he wouldn't have confronted him.
Zimmerman was only responding to a direct question from the police dispatcher, but those 3 words stung many.
Gracious God, our Heavenly Father, we lift up this case to you because you, Father God, know exactly what happened that night.
Here at the AME Allen Church in Sanford, churchgoers say publicly what many feel privately.
I can assure you unequivocally, if I, being a black man, had killed a 17-year-old white boy under the conditions that that boy was murdered, I've been in jail, probably doing time now. You know, I'm just calling it like it is.
About a third of Sanford's 54,000 residents are black. As the trial gripped their community, some church members began speaking out about an unholy topic.
Until we become honest about the divide that exists in this community, there will be no getting better.
Still, this little church dreamed big, the laundry list of prayers to be answered.
First thing we asked for was the arrest. Then we asked for the chief of police to be fired, and we did get an African-American black chief. That was our heart's desire.
Divine intervention? Perhaps, but it was the city manager's intervention that fired the old police chief and hired Cecil Smith.
Think you were hired because you're African American?
I think I was hired for my qualifications.
Smith will attempt to play top cop, mediator, and peacemaker all at the same time.
There's been essentially a separation between the two races for quite some time. And our goal right now, at least for police chief, is to try to bridge that gap.
In closing arguments and speaking to the all-female jury, all but one of whom are white, prosecutor Bernie Della Rianda invoked Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech as he tried to do damage control on Rachel Gentile's testimony.
I had a dream that today a witness would be judged not on the color of her personality, but on the content of her testimony.
George Zimmerman, the man charged with second-degree murder of...
Folks in Sanford are well aware the nation is watching.
It turned out to a big week in the George Zimmerman trial.
The trial broadcast wall-to-wall on TV.
Is it a race case? Yes, because we've all interjected race into it. Those civil rights activists and the media. You helped to make this a race case.
At the most racially charged trial in memory, TV cameras have also spotted Shauna Lloyd. This 34-year-old African-American law student works for the defense as a law clerk, which means by extension, she works for George Zimmerman. The jaded will say she is nothing more than a legal prop.
You sit there every day. You look at George Zimmerman sitting right next to you. How do you feel about him?
I feel bad for George. I think it's very unfortunate that Trayvon Martin lost his life, because loss of life is always unfortunate. But I think that George is also fighting for a life that probably will never be the same, but it's still his.
Do you think of George Zimmerman as a topic differently than you think of George Zimmerman the person?
Absolutely.
Have other people asked you about her?
Yes, some have asked, is she there because of her race? And, the answer is pretty easy. No.
Another example of the case that's all about race, despite the word rarely mentioned in court.
Racism has been the elephant in the room in the trial, but never overtly mentioned.
It's the sort of ultimate personification of how race plays itself out in our society today. You don't really know.
And you can't really put your finger on it.
But you feel it, right? If you're on the receiving end of that, you feel it.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
Even before the verdict was read, it was all hands on deck.
What percentage of your police force is going to be ready in anticipation of whatever happens?
Our entire police department.
Everybody.
There's no vacations, there's no furloughs.
The George Zimmerman trial finally delivered a verdict, not guilty, adding fuel to a fire of racial tensions flaring across the country. But what was it like for the jurors themselves? Tonight, one woman comes forward to tell us what happened on the other side of those closed doors. ABC's Robin Roberts sat down for an exclusive interview with a woman who felt the weight of the world on her shoulders.
We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
The not guilty verdict that set George Zimmerman free in the shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin rattled the nation, with many Americans questioning the jury's decision and wanting to ask the jurors a very tough question.
Some people have said George Zimmerman got away with murder. How do you respond to those people who say that?
George Zimmerman got away with murder, but you can't get away from God.
Juror B29, Maddie, came forward today in an ABC News exclusive interview. She said it wasn't an easy decision.
It's hard for me to sleep. It's hard for me to eat.
You haven't asked for money. You haven't asked for a book deal. You haven't asked for anything other than a forum to be able to tell your story.
Yeah. I don't need money. No money in this world could pay me to forget the pain that I'm going through. Trayvon Martin will always be in my heart.
But she wanted to talk about the verdict, how the jury reached it, and about what she sees as perhaps a higher justice.
At the end of the day, he's going to have a lot of questions and answers he has to deal with. The law couldn't prove it. We just have to believe in the Lord that if he has to pay, he will pay.
Maddie says putting her emotions aside and only considering the law was not easy.
I stand by the decision because of the law. If I stand by the decision because of my heart, he would have been guilty.
A 36-year-old mother of 8 who calls herself a black Hispanic was the only minority on the jury. Since the verdict and the public backlash, she says she has been ridden with guilt.
I feel that I was forcibly included in Trayvon Martin's death.
The shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin brought the issue of race in America back to the forefront.
Murder is the crime.
After Zimmerman's acquittal, outrage ignited across the country.
So how do you respond when you see people who are making this about race, who are saying, had Trayvon not been a young black man, that the conversation would be different?
Is it true? That's a question to be asked.
Even the president brought it up.
There are very few African-American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me.
Just like Obama, I go to a lot of places and I get people to follow me sometimes.
Trayvon Martin's parents' reaction to the verdict echoes the feelings of many Americans.
I really didn't believe that he was not guilty.
While George Zimmerman has remained silent, his parents spoke to ABC News, offering an apology to Trayvon's family.
We are deeply sorry for this tragedy.
But for Trayvon Martin's parents, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, the fight for justice continues as they consider a civil suit.
It's not just about the Trayvon Martin case. Now it's about your kids. It's about other kids.
2 days after the verdict, another juror, B37, spoke to Anderson Cooper on CNN.
I think both were responsible for the situation they had gotten themselves into. I think both of them could have walked away.
There were some things that the other jurors said that you wanted to respond to.
B37 used the word we. I guess because we were in the jury together. she put it all as in a group. And the way she made a lot of us sound was, we walk by color. And that's not what I do.
And that was something that a lot of people from the outside thought must have been the discussion in the deliberations about race, about color, but that wasn't the case?
It was not the case.
In their first vote, B37 told CNN 3 jurors wanted not guilty. 1 wanted murder, second degree, and 2 wanted manslaughter.
What was your first vote?
My first vote was second degree murder.
How did you go from, in 9 hours, from feeling he was guilty of second degree murder to not guilty?
In between that 9 hours, it was hard. A lot of us that wanted to find something bad, something that we could connect to the law, because for myself, he's guilty. Because the evidence shows he's guilty.
He's guilty of?
Killing Trayvon Martin. But as the law was read to me, if you have no proof that he killed them intentionally, you can't say he's guilty.
What was going on in your mind, your heart?
I was the juror that was going to give him the hung jury. Oh, I was. I fought to the end.
Do you have regrets that you didn't?
Kind of. I mean, I'm the only minority, and I felt like I let a lot of people down.
This polarizing case began in a gated community in Sanford, Florida. On February 26, 2012, Martin was walking back to a house where he and his father were staying. He caught the attention of the self-appointed neighborhood watch captain, George Zimmerman, who called police.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something.
They suggested he stay in his car.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
What happened next is in dispute, but there seems to be no question there was an altercation loud enough so that multiple neighbors called 911. At issue, who was the attacker?
Oh my God! It's someone to be shot. Yes, the person is dead, laying on the grass.
Zimmerman fired 1 gunshot and killed Trayvon Martin. Those 911 calls were believed to be crucial pieces of evidence.
Whose voice did you think it was on the 911 call?
I have never really paid mind to whose voice it was. Because the evidence shows that people's voices change when you're in extreme motion.
During the trial, the FBI's audio expert did testify that it is impossible to tell who was screaming for help. During their 16 hours of deliberations, the consideration of a possible manslaughter verdict weighed heavily on Maddie.
When you all sent that note to the judge asking for an explanation on manslaughter, what was that about?
What we were trying to figure out was manslaughter. In order to be charged, we had to prove that when he left home, he said, I'm going to go kill Trayvon Martin.
Her own lawyer, David Chico, says even legal experts would have been confused.
And I've thought a lot about it, and I haven't really been able to come up with, with really another charge. Except, I mean, I think manslaughter was a charge that could be put forth.
Maddie says she had no idea that the world was watching so closely.
Solidarity!
After the jury was released, she says she crumbled as the negative news reports about their verdict erupted.
I literally fell on my knees and I broke down. My husband was holding me. I was screaming and crying. And I kept saying to myself, I feel like I killed him. And I feel that if they would put the law and a lot of people would read it, they would understand the choices that they gave us.
She says the choices she made, she still stands by today.
Where do we go from here?
My hope is that we stop walking around looking at color.
That also seemed the hope of the devastated parents of Trayvon Martin, who have been giving a kind of master class in forgiveness.
We continue to pray that, that we'll find peace and strength to be forgiving parents.
What would you like to say to Trayvon's parents?
I would like to apologize because I feel like I let them down. I didn't know how much importance I was into this case because I never looked at color, and I still don't look at color.
That's the Trayvon Martin story. So you decide. Did Trayvon get justice?